The news day continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. Cash remittances sent by OFW slightly climbed year-on-year in April. According to data from the Bangko Sentral, remittances coursed through banks stood at $2.48 billion in April. That's 3.7% higher compared to the $2.4 billion from the same month in 2022. The Bangko Sentral attributed the increase in growth in receipts from land and sea-based workers. The BSP also notes that remittances remained resilient through the ups and downs of the global economy. Meanwhile, China Bank economist Dominique Velasquez says high inflation and the weaker peso may have prompted OFWs to send more money home. The Bangko Sentral sees no need to move in tandem with the U.S. Federal Reserve on interest rate hikes. BSP Deputy Governor Francisco Daquila said addressing still elevated domestic inflation is more important. With this, he explained that the actions of the U.S. are now, quote, less of a factor in the central bank's policy decisions. The Fed has retained policy rates at 5 to 5.25% range, ending a string of 10 consecutive rate increases. For its part, the BSP's Monetary Board paused its tightening cycle last month, keeping the rate unchanged at 6.25%. The Monetary Board's next three policy meetings are scheduled on June 22, August 17, and September 21.
What the Fed does will remain relevant, but right now, domestic considerations carry more weight. And even if the Fed decides to pause from its policy tightening, we may not move in complete lockstep if the domestic inflation picture warrants a different response.
Back here in the Philippines, President Bongbong Marcos has launched his administration's plan to strengthen the country's export sector. The President unveiled the Philippine Export Development Plan 2023 to 2028 at the International Trade Forum of the Trade Department. The President admitted that the Philippines is lagging behind its Asian neighbors in terms of exports. President Marcos noted that 40% of our exports is only one product, while 49 billion pesos in potential revenue remains untapped.
That is why we have to bring up our game, export game a little bit, and support our exporters so that they can compete in foreign markets and that they are able to be not only suppliers but also industrial consumers of the products that are around the world.
The Trade Department said the President's visit to other countries are also boosting the Philippines' export sector, as these visits help in promoting local products to foreign investors. Among the countries that the President is eyeing to visit soon is the United Arab Emirates. Aside from economic agenda, Marcos also aims to attend the Climate Change Summit in UAE. This as the administration seeks to focus on addressing the impacts of climate change here in the Philippines, like strong storms and the El Nino phenomenon.
I hope that we will be able to attend, and beyond the conference of parties is that we also want to renew and our ties with the UAE. Ang daming Pilipino doon. Kaya't kailangan makatiyak tayo na patuloy ang kanilang magandang pagtrato sa ating mga kababayan sa UAE.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. The tourism industry's contribution to the country's economic output rose in 2022. According to preliminary data from the Philippine Statistics Authority, tourism's direct gross value added accounted for 6.2% of the country's GDP in 2022. That's higher than tourism's 5.2% share to the economy in 2021. This measures the tourism-related value created by various industries. Experts attribute the increase to the reopening of borders and relaxed travel policies. Still on tourism, the proposed value-added tax refund for foreign tourists is expected to boost economic output if implemented. The National Economic and Development Authority says the VAT refund measure could contribute up to 12.8 billion pesos annually from 2024 to 2028 to the country's GDP through increased spending and additional jobs. NEDA says the increase in spending would create up to 6,000 jobs. The proposed measure would establish a VAT refund scheme for foreign tourists on goods that cost 3,000 pesos and are exported from the Philippines. The Tourism Department also sees the measure benefiting the economy, saying that it would encourage tourists to stay longer and shell out a little more.
It will encourage tourists to actually spend more and stay longer, which means that this will directly improve the growth of a local economy, also contribute to job generation.
The Tourism Department also notes that the Philippines is the only country in Southeast Asia to not have a tax refund scheme for tourists.
When we look at our top competitors, let's say Thailand or Malaysia or any other country, we do have the same top products that we offer to a traveler. So they really come there for sun and beach, for recreation, for nature, and we all have that. But the one thing that sets them apart from us is really the availability of, a better shopping portfolio as well as the VAT refund scheme.
Finance Chief Ben Jokno has invited businessmen in Singapore to invest in the proposed Maharlika Investment Fund. This as economic managers touted the yet-to-be-established fund during the Philippine Economic Managers' second trip to Singapore for their economic briefing. Jokno said returns from the MIF would make for an alternative source of funds for the country's infrastructure projects. Economic managers said the government has 194 infrastructure projects lined up, worth 8.3 trillion pesos. Jokno said they do not expect MIF returns to fund all these entirely, but instead serve as additional funds. Jokno also proposed creating sub-funds under the MIF.
The fund has to earn money. So you have short-term, long-term investments, and we propose to create several sub-funds, infrastructure fund, maybe green fund, and so forth and so on. Okay.
The National Economic and Development Authority also said that the government would prioritize raising investments for the MIF from the private sector. Socioeconomic Planning Secretary Arsenio Balisacan said private investors would help boost the country's labor sector.
There's no other way of improving the quality of employment than getting a major push in the investment. So we need to get those investments to complement a rapidly growing labor force.
Economic managers also believe investments from the private sector will help the country meet its GDP growth target of 6.5 to 8%. With this, economic managers believe the country will be able to achieve upper middle income status within 2 years. However, the Bangko Sentral says the government must still keep an eye on inflation and other risks that may weigh on economy.
The risks are still on the upside for both this year and for next year. So we're at the BSP, we're continuing to monitor the possible upside risks to inflation. And let me mention a number of them that we've flagged to the Monetary Board, including additional transport fare hikes, higher domestic food prices, higher wage adjustments.
The World Bank has approved a $750 million loan for the Philippines for sustainable projects. The multilateral lender said the loan would support the country's policy reforms for environmental protection and climate resilience. The financing aims to increase private investment in renewable energy and improve plastic waste management, among other efforts. The World Bank said the Philippines has potential in R&E, as the country targets to increase its share to 50% of the total power generation mix by 2040. A recent study shows that Filipino content creators on TikTok earn more than the minimum wage. According to TikTok Southeast Asia Socioeconomic Report of 2023, around 40% of polled content creators in the Philippines have been earning above the base salary. The current minimum wage in Metro Manila stands at 570 pesos a day. Across Southeast Asia, 80% of TikTok creators said they have boosted their incomes. This is through TikTok Live and working with brands in paid sponsorships. The National Water Resources Board has maintained higher water allocation from Angat Dam for water concessionaires. NWRB Executive Director Sevilio David said the 52 cubic meters per second allocation has been extended until June 30. This was decided upon the request of the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System. MWSS Division Manager Patrick Neeson said this would help prevent service interruptions. The NWRB was supposed to reduce the water allocation from 52 to 50 CMS by today to provide more supply for irrigation. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News. All sides, all the time.